Welcome into another edition of New Track Record. Caleb Hatch and Justin Kinney with you. We are back after a 1-week hiatus here in the off season. Just had a few things going on in my life. I was a little busy.
He was out of the country dealing with some things.
Yeah.
No, he was not over in Ukraine or anything, but important things nonetheless.
Yes. Got married, then went to Mexico for the week.
And still married.
Yes.
So far, so good.
Yes. That is key. And very much enjoyed my time in Mexico. I had been to Mexico, but nowhere cool, just like border towns.
Yeah.
And this is my first time going to like a all-inclusive resort, so that was really nice. And
well, it was nice for your now wife too to also balance business with pleasure, because I know you were going throughout Mexico during this week to find tracks and venues that would be interested in hosting an IndyCar race. So always working, Mr. Caleb Hatch.
No, thankfully I did not do that. There were no racetracks that I saw in my travels staying in the Cancun region. So
you don't see possibility of a Cancun Grand Prix?
To be honest, I didn't spend enough time besides, getting driven to the airport and leaving from the airport in a shuttle to really know the possibilities there. I'm sure there would be.
Do you think Tony Kottman can visit places or drive without that popping into his head about where he would design a track, a street course in every town he's driving through? Like, is he going through oh, this would be a tight turn. This would be a really picturesque part of it. This would be a good passing zone. I wonder if he can separate those things.
He probably can, but so can a lot of people by just using Google Maps satellite view.
Very true. You can build anything, right? So
yeah, if you build it, they will hopefully come. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, probably not.
Probably not, but I mean, look, we all would like a race in Mexico. I would hope they can get a race in Mexico soon. Obviously not next year, but maybe 2024. That would be nice.
Well, we saw when we saw with the Mexican Grand Prix and how the crowds come out. Obviously.
Oh, I mean, it was a big deal for the country. So I watched a little bit of Fox Sports Mexico, and they had F1 coverage on there. They have Thursday Night Football, which I watched, which was weird because it was dubbed over in Spanish with the announcers, with Spanish announcers, but they were showing just the regular Amazon Prime feed, which is kind of weird. I watched some F1 kind of preview stuff where I didn't understand a word they were saying, but I was just watching, and they had this, Sergio Perez, little documentary that was set to air.
Okay.
Checo something was the name. I forget what it was, but
Checo to Checkered. That's what I'm going to say. It was
no. It was basically rising above or overcoming obstacles, something like that.
Well, we saw how popular Pato O'Ward was at the Mexican Grand Prix, and there were a lot of pictures online seeing him signing autographs and big crowds around him. So you would hope IndyCar could get something off the ground in Mexico before Pato O'Ward says farewell to the IndyCar series. Yeah,
one would hope, and I mean, shoot, it was cool. I was on Telcel, which is a Checo sponsor.
Well, all of a sudden, you were texting me. I didn't expect to hear from you for a week, and then I was like, "Man, he's paying $2.35 a text to talk to me."
Nope.
Oh, that's why I made it out to be. I felt like I was that important. But I think gone are the days with that. If you can get signal in Mexico, good signal, you're not having to pay exorbitant prices.
There was signal, but there was not data. That makes any sense. So I had Wi-Fi at the resort, but you leave the resort, and I didn't really use it.
Gotcha.
Because there wasn't really a way to use it. But,
well, it was good for you to check in. I always worry when people go to Mexico if you're going to lose some organs or something. But you came back intact. Both of you came back reasonably intact.
Yeah, not that wild. I mean, the resort was pretty tame. You venture outside the resort, you go to the shops. It can get a little interesting. Hey, do you want to pet this monkey? Or they have these. It's not a lemur, but it's like a mix between a lemur and a raccoon that people have. Do you want a picture with this? There was this one that the guy said his name was Justin Bieber, which was hilarious.
Ooh, the monkey was named Justin Bieber?
Yeah, the lemur raccoon, whatever hybrid, I forget the name of it. And then, snakes and all kinds of just on the street. It was interesting.
But you do have to, I feel when you go to places like that, you have to venture out and see the culture a little bit. Because I remember doing a cruise and stopped in Jamaica. And of course, they have the little area that's like the cruise area, but you can venture out. The
tourist trap.
Yeah, the tourist trap. But I mean, the whole thing is a tourist trap, even when you venture out. But it's a different strategy when you walk out there and they're just inundating you with this, that, and the other. But I felt like you need to go out there and experience the quote unquote real Mexico or the real Jamaica a little bit. You don't want to be those snooty people that never leave. Leave the confines of everything that feels like America.
No, we went and walked around. So like the resort, we stayed in Playa del Carmen. So the resort was right in the heart of like the shopping district. So you went out and like right there. And there was like a really nice like upscale shopping mall plus a bunch of little shops along the street. So we ventured out into that a couple of times and got some little trinkets and stuff. But it was interesting. And leaving the airport, once you get past customs and then you go out to the rental car area, man, it's a zoo.
I mean, imagine.
We had already prearranged our shuttle service. Yeah. Because it's about 45 minutes to an hour ride between Cancun Airport and the resort. But man, it was wild.
Crazy?
Yes, very much so.
Just pesos flying all over the place. You pay for everything.
Hey, the key is pay in pesos on your credit card.
Really? Because the conversion rate and everything?
As long as you're getting a good conversion rate, anywhere between 19 and 21 pesos is pretty standard, but you get a better price in pesos than you do in US dollars.
Duly noted.
Yeah.
All right, that'll do it for this week's show.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for joining us. It's been a great return. Okay. Speaking of Mexico, though, plenty to get to. We have Alex Palou, who participated in an FP1 Pato Award, the Mexican driver in IndyCar. He welcomes a new teammate for the Indy 500, plus the team welcomes a new sponsor. And Roger Penske wants more ovals. Indy Lights has a new name. That's all to come on this week's episode. I think we'll start things off with McLaren and their announcements this week. First off, Tony Kanaan will be in a fourth car with the team that had been rumored before, officially confirmed now this week. And he'll be the fourth car. So they have the driver who finished second in Pato Award, the driver who finished third, right, in Tony Kanaan, the driver who finished fourth in Felix Rosenqvist, and the driver who finished fifth in Alexander Rossi in this year's Indy 500. That's their lineup.
It just shows how important it is for McLaren to win this race. Still hasn't won a championship, obviously. Still hasn't won a 500 either, but they're setting this team up to have their best shot. It seems like every successive year we say that this next year is their best shot, but taking the path to try to do that, and anytime you can also snake a sponsor, a huge sponsor, the title sponsor of the series from Chip Ganassi, and go to your team, that's a bonus.
Yeah, so Kanaan will have branding from NTT Data as part of his 500 ride, plus they'll switch from Chip Ganassi Racing to Arrow McLaren SP. They will be Felix Rosenqvist sponsoring the number 6 Chevy in 10 of the 17 races, I believe. So that's a switch. And then Alexander Rossi will move over and we'll have Views branding, which was, I think, Felix's primary. Views on one car, Arrow on the other. I honestly can't remember which one's which. But, yeah. I mean, these are huge wins for this team. And the rivalry between Chip Ganassi and Zach Brown just seems to build because of these moves, because he steals one of the veteran drivers and steals a longtime Ganassi sponsor. I mean, NTT Data had been with Ganassi going back to the 2013 Indy 500 with, I think, Ryan Briscoe. That goes to show you how long that relationship has been.
And you don't see this happen very often. You don't see sponsors, especially longtime sponsors, go from one power team to another. So, man, I would love to know why. Is it to follow a particular driver? Is it some sort of better deal? I don't know. How does this work? But you mentioned they're on McLaren cars in Formula One, correct?
Yes, and they have been for a bit, just like Arrow's been on McLaren cars for a couple years.
Right. So that could be the
that could
tie-in.
be part of it. Yes.
Yeah. So, and I would think maybe that's the big part. If they're if they were restructuring the deal on the F1 side, maybe they said, hey, you may as well come over to the IndyCar side. But just when you think the rivalry between Zach and Chip can't get any hotter, something like this happens. And you knew Tony Kanaan, he wasn't just going to come back, and he wasn't going to leave Chip Ganassi or I don't say leave Chip Ganassi, but not go to another team or another opportunity unless he thought it was a good opportunity. McLaren is definitely a good opportunity.
Yeah. Well, and I just feel like you have more continuity. Look, Alex Blow's going to McLaren in 2024. We already know that. That's essentially a done deal as well. So this is a team that's being aggressive, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it. That's a factor. But this is a team that is going out and basically getting what they want, taking what they want, being aggressive, and they put the rest of IndyCar on notice because of it.
Eventually, you need to start winning 500s and winning championships and, quite frankly, winning more races at McLaren. But they're doing all the things to not only take steps to achieve that, but also leaving a path of pissed off people in their wake, which is, I love it. I'm here for it.
Yes, it makes things very, very interesting.
And if you wanted, we've talked about rivalries or whatever in IndyCar, and we needed it with drivers. Maybe it's that team. I think McLaren has definitely been that team that people are starting to root against because of how they operate. I don't have any problem with it, but I can see other people having a problem with it, and inside the paddock and outside the paddock. But this is what IndyCar needs: is some spunk, some attitude, some healthy rivalries, and the biggest one right now in the sport is definitely Chip versus Zach.
Yes, and let's hope we can get some rivalries on track. # Indy Rivals to to make it more entertaining. But I mean, this move is pretty big. Now, what does this mean for Ganassi? I mean, the 10-car funding is set. Look, I'm sure there's some sort of money that had to change hands with the Alex Palou lawsuit stuff. I mean, that ride's secure. Not that that's a surprise. There are other sponsors. You got to remember, it's not like NTT was on the car for every single race. There was Ridgeline on it a couple of times. We even saw PNC on it, right?
Right.
So they will find a way to make it happen. That's not. American Legion was also on it. Like, that's not.
They'll be fine.
That's not a concern.
But it does hurt. I imagine it's a significant amount of money that they were getting from NTT, and that's gone.
Plus the money gone from Carvana as of right now.
It's a good point too. So Chip's got to do some rearranging, and once again, it's McLaren grabbing somebody or an entity that was with Chip, and I'm here for it. Bring it. Next is Scott Dixon.
Yeah. Someone's got to step up. So that's the first look at things, at least on the news that we missed. What else do we have? Well, let's talk about it. Indy Lights is no longer, it is now Indy NXT. Indy Next,
I guess.
I'm guessing it's Indy Next. Okay.
Yeah.
We knew there was a name change coming. We knew that it would be presented by Firestone Tires because they switched, because Cooper Tires was part of the Road to Indy, which is now like USF Junior, whatever the name is now.
USF 2000 or USF Juniors, USF 2000, USF Pro 2000.
Yes. And it's not really called the Road to Indy anymore, though. I forget what they kind of nicknamed it.
Whatever it is, it's better than Indy Next. Yes.
So we'll say Indy Next. They did this to appeal to Gen Z and younger audience. Now we're not in that generation, mind you, to be clear. However, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess is how I look at it. Indy Next has zero branding awareness. I at least knew what Indy Lights was, and the Indy Lights name has been around for a very long time. I mean, we're talking like 40 plus years. So
yeah, it's been a while, and it didn't need on the hierarchy of things that needed addressed. This is not even on the list.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a series that's finally getting some growth, finally has some stability with car count, it seems, getting a lot of drivers. Up until this offseason has had drivers advance to IndyCar that won the championship, and we have a new name, but we have the current champion unable to land an IndyCar ride.
That's a bigger problem than the name.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. It seems like a bunch of old people trying to be cool. It's like me coming up with Indy NXT. I don't know what 20-somethings are into, but I feel like I'm closer to that demographic than the people making these decisions.
Also, if you're going to try to target someone, don't you want to target like a 10-year-old?
I don't understand what
because
this does.
The people driving in this series are often, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. So
right.
You want to target someone, much younger.
Wasn't there was it WNBA that was the slogan "We Got Next" or something?
I think so.
Early on in their formation, I think that's a good 20 years old. Like that. That's the same thing as this, basically. 20 years after, like 2022. I don't understand what this does. And really, nobody's really come up front and said why this needed changed. There's really no rationale on or description on what the plan is for Indy Lights. I'm sorry, I'm still going to call it Indy Lights. What's the plan with Indy Lights? Is it just a rebrand and that's it? What were you trying to get away from?
They're trying to defy everything.
Apparently.
Here's my real issue with this name, and this is like a
that there's no vowel in it.
No, well, yeah. But jokes aside, but like seriously, this what I do not understand with this. So WWE, they're like kind of undercard series, if you will.
Yeah, it's called WWE Next, right?
Yes, NXT.
Yes,
the same thing.
Yes.
Plus, one of my buddies texted me. He's an IndyCar fan. Texted me. Yeah, my accounting software is also called NXT. So there's multiple things where it's going to confuse people. Like, did they not do a Google search here?
No, they didn't.
And realize, one, could you get like a cease and desist, from these other entities?
Unless it's trademarked. Is NXT trademarked by either one of those two?
I'm not sure. I mean, that's the concern. Now, they're not going to trademark NXT. They'd trademark Indy NXT. But
correct.
Just because of the branding,
WWE.
That could be an actual problem for them.
I just want somebody to explain to me in simple terms what was wrong with Indy Lights and why Indy NXT or next. Do we know? Is it NXT or next, or what are we supposed to say?
I think it's next.
Why? What was wrong with Indy Lights? Somebody's going to have to come to me and I find it hard to believe they're going to say, well, plenty of people didn't want to enter Indy Lights because it doesn't have a zippy name. I don't understand. And the investment that Roger Penske and the Penske Corporation have to make in rebranding everything with Indy Lights. Now, it's not as big of a deal as it would be IndyCar, but it's still, you have to go through and every reference to Indy Lights is now Indy Next or whatever, and whatever minuscule marketing campaign that you put together. How much did that 20-second, 30-second video cost? Several $1,000s at least. So why are we doing this? Is it now going to be Indy Next and Indy Now instead of IndyCar? Is that what we're setting ourselves up for? I don't understand.
It better not be.
I don't get it. I don't get the reasoning, and we weren't the only ones. There was plenty of WTFs out there on the Twitterverse after this came out.
Yeah, with all the WWE tie-ins and people just saying, did they even research this? I guess that's my concern. Indy Next or NXT by Firestone. That's the name, the official name.
Whatever.
Schedule also released for the season. They'll open it at St. Pete with IndyCar, then be at Barber late April. IMS Road Course, 2 races that weekend along with IndyCar. Detroit, 2 races with IndyCar. Road America, Mid-Ohio, Iowa, Nashville, Gateway, Portland, and then a doubleheader at Laguna Seca. So all the weekends with IndyCar. No real surprises on the schedule. Nothing. There's nothing really
there.
out of the ordinary with any of that. But
and the problem is more people are talking about the name than your schedule. I don't know if I would have released both at the same time because, oh yeah, the schedule got released, but everybody's talking about Indy Next or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the schedule's not that big of an announcement because it'll be with IndyCar. They haven't done many of those weekends, especially because Penske Entertainment took over. Why would they have a weekend just for Indy NXT outside of an IndyCar race weekend.
Because everything is about saving money unless it comes to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Yeah, which next week
we'll
dive into that for sure. Since as we record this on November 3rd, November 4th, Friday is the 3-year anniversary of Penske taking over IMS in IndyCar. And we'll kind of do a 3-year review, since obviously year 1 gets a complete pass through the pandemic, and even for most of year 2. But now year 3, we can really
no
dive
longer
into
an excuse.
Stuff. Yes.
And for us to be sitting here 4 months from year 4 and still really not have a concrete blueprint of where this series is going is concerning. But we'll talk about that the next episode.
For sure. Some other topics to get to, we mentioned. So, more ovals. Roger Penske saying to David Malsher Lopez, motorsport.com, we are looking at Milwaukee and to how we can add ovals to our schedule in the future, but we certainly don't have a deal to return there. And anything you've heard like that is somewhat speculation. So again, they're looking to add Milwaukee. This is not a surprise, but Penske's on the record now with it, so that does mean something, right?
Sure. I think Lights is a trial, or Trucks is a trial.
Yes. And then Penske talks about how important it was to get Texas. They want to return and make that a proper event. But Milwaukee's the only one he mentioned by name as far as a future possibility. But they're heavily investing in the Texas race, not just because it's preparation for Indy, which Penske believes is very important to have an oval before the Indy 500, but also because it's a key market for NTT. So that's what they're looking at there. I guess, look, you want more ovals, add more ovals. Just do it. Less talk, more action.
Here's my problem. Okay, with ovals. So this is how it goes. IndyCar fans say they want more ovals. IndyCar adds ovals. IndyCar fans do not go to ovals. IndyCar drops ovals. And the cycle repeats itself. So people wanting ovals, IndyCar adds them, nobody goes, IndyCar drops them, repeat. So once again, here we are that Roger Penske saying the right things and saying we're going to add ovals, and people going, yeah, we need more ovals. But then people don't show up. And I know people will say, well, look at Iowa. Well, that's been 1 year, and an immense amount of money was put up, particularly for the musical acts across the weekend. Is that sustainable? I don't know. Maybe it is. But you look at Gateway, and for 4 or 5 years, that was the beacon of this is how it's going to be for IndyCar if you just do what Gateway does.
Until they got NASCAR. And now it's really about IndyCar is very much an afterthought now. And even Gateway is declining in attendance. So here's the thing, folks. If you want ovals, go to ovals. IndyCar will add 20 ovals tomorrow if they can guarantee 40,000 people at each race, at each oval, but nobody shows up. Nobody shows up. And you can say, well, the product isn't that great, blah, blah, blah. Oh, there's not much going on at the track. Look, put your money where your mouth is. If you want ovals on the schedule, if you want more than the 4 we have, then go to the ovals. Go to Milwaukee. Go to Richmond if it goes in the schedule. Go to Homestead. Wherever. You need to show up because IndyCar repeatedly has added ovals and nobody goes. So I don't know what you expect Roger Penske to do here because he's going to put races in markets where people show up. And right now ovals aren't selling. And there's a history of that too. How many ovals have been added to the schedule and dropped over the past decade? Past decade, man, that's a good question. I mean, technically Richmond, which never happened due to the pandemic, Milwaukee, Phoenix, Pocono.
I mean, Vegas, but for different reasons.
Yeah, Vegas.
Fontana.
Yep. That's another one.
Pocono. You mentioned Pocono. Yeah. I mean, the list is
that's
a half dozen that if people would have shown up and you take Vegas out of it, that's 5 racetracks right there that would still have IndyCar races if people showed up. Well, but they don't.
And even Pocono, I mean, their crowd was growing at the end partly because people thought, well, this will be it.
Right.
For IndyCar at Pocono. And I get you had a couple of bad wrecks there. It's very unfortunate. We lost Justin Wilson there. It's
but
unfortunate.
Tremendously unlucky what happened
to Robert Wickens. And then you had the big crash. No one was hurt, but you had the big crash with Takuma Sato and a handful of drivers.
Look, we still go to Texas.
Final race. Yeah.
And to me, Texas is a lot more dangerous, in my opinion, than Pocono. You just had some bad luck situations. First, of course, with Justin Wilson, and then Robert Wickens. But it's just I roll my eyes when I see these stories about adding more ovals. Because I'm like, why would you add more ovals? Nobody goes. But that's me.
You got to find a way to promote it. Look, having a race and then some vintage car laps or some stunt performance before, and that's it. That's not good enough. You got to combine a lot more entertainment. And I think that's why road and street course events, you don't have to sit in hot bleachers in the sun.
Correct.
For hours. You can move around. You can bring your camping chair, blanket, and move around.
You got other things going on track.
Yeah. You have
actual races.
You have a lot of food vendors. And Gateway has done a good job of kind of working around. I mean, they have a huge amount of food vendors and access for that. They have like I think a contest every year of, best concession and all that. They have lots of entertainment. They do lots of things that other tracks don't do, but you have to make it a big event. And doing the high level concerts that they did at Iowa, I mean, that is something, but that's not an end all be all. It may not work at every place. So you have to think outside the box. Think outside the oval. And
it's very much chicken or the egg, because a lot of these tracks are going, why am I going to invest in a lot of marketing when I'm not expecting a big crowd anyway? Or I don't have the budget because I lost X amount of money on this race last year. So it's very much people are like, well, the series needs to invest in marketing. Well, take Texas. They've probably lost 6 figures on hosting IndyCar over the years, at least. And you all of a sudden want them to pump $250,000 in marketing and promotion. They probably did that before, and they probably lost a lot of money. So in my opinion, it's put up or shut up, because I think Roger Penske's going to do his part. He's going to add Milwaukee. He'll try to add Richmond, but will people show up? And will they show up in year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? It's a good question.
Yeah, that's the ultimate question. And I feel like we have that question right now with Gateway is part of it, but you have to provide more value than just a race for people to show up to and do something new. And also part of the reason why the crowds went away, I mean, a lot of people attended the other races because they had to, as part of the season ticket package for tracks where you had to buy all the races to get the NASCAR Cup Series tickets. Right. So they went to the other ones.
That was a hot ticket, which it no longer is.
Yeah, exactly. So that changed, and then that changed the oval crowds. And it doesn't help that NASCAR owns, 95% of the ovals in this country? I mean, seriously, 90 to 95%. And so that gives NASCAR incentive to not promote IndyCar and promote NASCAR, because once you do the same, I mean, you promote your own product over someone else who's essentially a track rental.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, because in the end, NASCAR wants their tracks to be profitable, and they're going to have profitable events. And if IndyCar events at ovals were profitable, then more ovals would be on the schedule. Period. That's what it comes down to. If ovals made money in IndyCar, there would be more of them on the track. I think the whole NASCAR thing and owning them, maybe not as clear cut and dry as it was maybe 10 years ago, where saying, okay, NASCAR is never going to allow IndyCar at this, that, or the other track. I think these tracks want to make money and they want to turn a profit, and they'll bring in any event that will help them make a profit. And if they don't think IndyCar can make a profit for them, then they're not going to host a race.
Yeah, it's plain and simple. And look, I think that's why they're struggling to get these oval tracks back, because they don't believe they can make money on it.
I would very much be very strategic in where and what I'm doing on ovals. I would very much rather have, what do we have right now? We have Texas, Iowa, Indy, Gateway.
Yep.
4?
Yep.
Okay, Indy's its own, so we're looking at 3. I would do everything I possibly can to make Texas, Gateway, and Iowa as profitable and successful as possible. That's where I'd focus my attention. And if Milwaukee comes in and says, hey, we see what you're doing here, we want to host an event, and then you add Milwaukee, I would do it that way, because I think that's the important thing is making these events profitable, and it's all about butts and seats, or lack thereof.
Speaking of ovals, let's talk about the biggest race in the series, as the Indy 500 could have bumping next year. The grid already filling up. We've had a couple of articles in recent days, first from Marshall Pruitt to Racer.com, then Nathan Brown of the Indy Star, talking about what the entry list looks like. Essentially, it's full. So Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Racing is running a fourth car. That's a new addition that we didn't have. Obviously, we had Arrow McLaren SP's fourth car announced as well the other week. So that essentially gets us to 33 entries that are confirmed. Now, we're awaiting the fourth Ganassi entry. We're awaiting a Dale Coyne entry. We're awaiting both Try and Ride Bold entries as far as drivers. The second Juncos Hollinger car, the fourth Ray Hall car, which Ryan Hunter-Reay is, I guess, considered to be the favorite for that ride, but according to Marshall Pruitt. But that's where we stand with that. Plus, we could have extra entries from Foyt, from Ganassi, and Dale Coyne Racing a potential third. So that's where things look at right now. Dragon Speed, not really expected to be back. Cusick expected to be back with Stefan Wilson. Ed Carpenter Racing only running 3. Top Gun, obviously not going to be a part of it, but RC Enerson, Neil Enerson, they could run something potentially. And then looking at other entries, we're not expecting an extra from Penske, for example. That's where things stand. It really just comes down to, where does Jimmy Johnson go for the 500 if he's going to race in the 500? I think that's the ultimate question right now.
Yeah, if anywhere. But, man, how amazing is it, Caleb? We sit here 6 months away from the Indianapolis 500, and we have 33 cars.
It's great. I guess the bummer is that the max is 36, and we know that, and the reality is 34 or 35,
and I don't think we'll get
more
there.
Likely.
Yeah. Well, this is the problem is I know when we look at this lineup, and there's a very much dearth of Indy-only programs, but this goes back, I feel, to the engine shortage. Is the key is to have an engine, and if you don't feel like you have a shot at getting an engine, then what's the point for everything else? So when these engine leases are so difficult to secure and basically maxed out before we even get to the one-offs, or the majority of the one-offs with independent teams, within the Indy-only programs, and it's very difficult to get off the ground and get very far. I mean, this is including, are we at 33 even without equating Peretta Autosport into this?
Yes.
And we assume that they're in discussions and in the conversation. So the fact that we're once again with Chevy and Honda maxing out their programs, and even probably more so, to get to over 33, but not necessarily over 36, is you're really thinning the herd in terms of eligible programs to put something together for May, unfortunately. And I think this is a product of the last couple years, with so many programs and teams trying to get something together and not being able to get an engine lease, or not being able to get it. And I think that's really shied people away from not only coming back continuously, but also new people that would try to enter the Indianapolis 500, seeing the barriers that these other Indy-only programs are having to face.
So Nathan Brown of the Indy Star saying Honda's at 18. We don't expect them to run more than that. 5 for Andretti. All those spots confirmed. Chip Ganassi Racing with 4. Obviously, that fourth car, TBA. Ray Hall with 4. Their fourth car, also TBA. Coyne with 3, according to Brown. Malukas, Sato, and a TBA. Now, Sato, it sounds like, could be ovals only.
Yeah.
That seems like one of the possibilities. Meyershank Racing will stick with 2. And then for Chevy, 4 at Arrow McLaren SP, 3 at Penske, 3 at Ed Carpenter Racing, 2 at Foyt, 2 at Ryan Reinbold. Again, both those to be announced. Juncos Hollinger Racing, ILOT, and then TBA as well. As far as how could this field expand, so that right there is 34. AJ Foyt Racing, they could add a third. I'm guessing they would, say if Stefan Wilson and Cusick, and that's a lucrative deal for them again. That's a possibility. Ed Carpenter Racing set at 3 cars, but barring a change in status quo, they'll be at 3. But there's potential for a 4th. Depends on what Peretta is able to put together. That seems iffy for them. Penske's going to stay at 3 unless, I guess, something crazy comes up for them. And then it just comes down to who we could see for the 4th Ganassi, 4th Rahal, and 3rd Coyne. I mean, Brown reporting that Jimmy Johnson could be a possibility. He was apparently in talks with the Rahal team before his deal came together with Ganassi. So that's one possibility there. Also, Dale Coyne Racing expects to have his full lineup for 2023 finalized by Thanksgiving. So that's a couple of weeks away as far as drivers go. You would think that the 4th Ganassi would be Jimmy Johnson, but if they want that car to be full time, how do they piece that together?
Do they run a 5th for Indy only if they do a 4th full time?
Wouldn't that get Honda though to 19? And I don't think there's a chance.
Depends on who that is. Who the seat is for.
Pruitt was saying, could they do a 19th if it's Jimmy Johnson or a high profile person? I mean, that's one where you maybe bite the bullet for it.
Right.
But even then, that seems like a reach.
But I think Chip is waiting on that car to see what Jimmy is going to do, I imagine. Is that where we're at? And what's that deadline for Chip? If he has an opportunity to run a 4th full-time car, does he take it? And what's the hard deadline for that? I don't know. Does he have to reconsider it now with the loss of a couple sponsors? Carvana, namely, NTT? Does that throw that influx of at least running 4 full-time cars with a 5th for May? Does it now become 3 full-time cars with a 4th for May?
Well, and Nicholas Latifi was kind of rumored for that Ganassi seat. However, he's kind of pushed back on some of that in recent weeks just because he's saying he's undecided for 2023. He may sit out a year. He may, do something else in F1. So, everything is kind of up in the air. He says he's interested in IndyCar, but he's not signed anything and unsure what he will do in 2023.
Difficult when you still have an F1 season to conclude like Latifi does. What is there, 2 races left?
A couple of races. Yeah, Abu Dhabi, and I think there's a couple left.
So he's probably not really going to put 100% of his focus on next season until he finishes up Formula One. So I think there's some decisions still to be made, but the fact that we sit at 33 right now in early November, absolutely tremendous. Do we end up at 34, 35, maybe even 36? We'll see, but at least we know here in early November, we're not going to be scrambling in March, April, trying to find enough entries to fill the field.
Also, these notes from Brown's article, IndyStar.com. So Dennis Reinbold says they will have 2 cars in the 500 in 2023. We know that. But Sage Karam will not be one of the drivers.
Interesting.
Karam told IndyStar the team had informed him they require drivers with a significant budget for their rides, something he couldn't provide. Karam's actually having some success in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, doing a handful of races there past couple of years.
Hopefully he gets a greater opportunity in 2023 to do that, because I think Sage's future, if he wants to be a full-time driver, lies in tin tops.
And Brown kind of surmises Don Cusick, Stephen Wilson, they provide a lot of funding. Could that be an option at Ryan Reinbold for one of the seats? Then also there's the second Juncos Hollinger car, and Andretti Autosport still doing their crowd-funded entry. It's
gotten a lot of money, hasn't it?
Yeah, $127,000 over the last 12 months.
I mean, that's something that...
goal of collecting another $250,000 before the 500. So they didn't have a car last year, but they followed through on perks for investors. We saw people with Maserati shirts on at the track like at Carb Day. So, I mean, they were out there.
We did, and kind of scoffed when that initiative was thrown out there, but man, crowdfunding has been a tremendous success for various entities, whether it be in sport, in movies, in getting ideas off the ground and stuff like that. So don't scoff at such things, because it's worked out, and Maserati Autosport on the right path, but it comes back to engine leases, and they may not have a shot in 2023. We'll see.
So a list of drivers who told IndyStar they were actively searching for a ride: Ryan Hunter-Reay, Ed Jones, Jer Hildebrand, Marcus Armstrong, Matthew Brabham, Charlie Kimball, Linus Lundqvist, and R.C. Enerson. So that's the full
significant list.
Yes. So that's where we stand on Indy 500. entries, nothing really a major surprise. I think Carob not returning, that's a bit of a surprise for sure. But we shall see what happens. I mean, those Dry and Reimel cars have been really good the past couple of years, but if they're going to require funding, I feel like that kind of changes those entries.
It does. And I mean, do you drop down? Because they're running 2, correct?
Yeah, they're running 2.
Do you drop to 1 based on funding or what? Or is that opportunity still open? They're just going to need a paid driver. I mean, could that be an RC Enerson type thing? Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, they'll have their pick of drivers with budgets. It's just Stephen Wilson has a budget. Outside of that, I don't know where things stand.
A lot to figure out in that regard, but not a lot of questions overall compared to most years.
Yeah,
at this time of the year.
It's a good problem.
It's a good problem. I would hope at least 35. We've talked about it at length, Caleb. I hate that 34. You're only bumping 1. I do want bumping, but I don't want to bump 1. I'd love to get to 35 and more.
Yeah, to me, 36 is like the minimum where it feels like it's really something. And we last had 36, in 2019 when we had Alonso go home, we had Pato O'Ward go home, and Max Chilton. So that is an ideal setup, and that was in the first year of a new car. So you can't tell me that you can't get the entries. This is the last year of this engine formula, and then next year with the hybrid engine, which they did the first hybrid test at IMS, I think with Honda the other week. So they tested their package on the road course a couple weeks ago. But you can't tell me that you can't put together, extra entries when we saw that happen in 2019. I guess that would have been year 2, though, of that new chassis package.
I think it just all comes down to 2 things: available engine leases, and of course, teams willing to loan out equipment to other teams. And I think that was one of the issues last year. I don't see that going away. And I don't see Chevy and Honda all of a sudden coming up and say, yeah, we're going to support 20 engine leases each. I don't see that as a reality.
Elsewhere in the news, Colton Herta. Now, Racer had reported this a while back before this news went out, but Andretti Autosport confirmed Colton Herta will remain with the team through the 2027 season, along with Gamebridge. There are reports that the contract is now the highest paid for a driver.
$7 million? Is that the number I saw thrown out there?
In IndyCar. I'm confused because I've heard everything from, Scott Dixon makes $3 million a year to $5 million after a recent extension. He was the highest paid driver in the series. I don't think there was any doubt. And
I think that's now Colton Herta from things that I have seen. Upwards of $6 to $7 million a year that Andretti is paying Colton Herta.
And it's believed that his contract would allow for a move to F1 with Andretti, but his new contract, it prevents such a move until 2025. Now, if it's with Andretti Global, obviously that's a little different. They'd find a way to figure that out. But
here's the thing.
They locked in their only legitimate title contender, their only race winner on the team. They had
needed to do that.
They had to do this.
Here's the thing. Contracts, as we know, mean nothing. So just because you signed Colton Herta to this deal doesn't mean that if he is wanted in Formula One by somebody, they won't pay out that contract to get him. I mean, there's stupid money in Formula One. So I'm sure there's an out clause of some sort. I'm sure it's a big number that Andretti would ask for, but I'm sure there's a number. And I think if he continues to perform in IndyCar and if he wins a 500, if he wins a championship, the want of him in Formula One is only going to grow, because there are a couple of teams that already have expressed interest in Colton Herta when the thought was he would be able to get his super license points. That would only grow if he's able to perform more and more. So yeah, the contract says he's locked in until 2027, but money talks, and Formula One teams have a whole hell of a lot of money.
Yeah, they have a lot of money, and if they can find a way to get Colton Herta, look, he's got to get the super license points, and he's really got to perform this upcoming season because of that extra year thrown into the pandemic that really shuffles, his points totals. after this upcoming season. So this is really his year to perform to get to that level again.
And it would be nice if he had some help with by some teammates up front consistently.
Yeah. Grosjean underperformed. We weren't expecting much from Devlin DeFrancesco. He had some flashes, though, later in the season. Had some speed at a few events. And then Kyle Kirkwood, I mean, going from Foyt to Andretti, that's a huge increase as far as engineers and car prep and speed and everything. But
he needs to stop crashing into things.
Yes, we'll be curious if he can be a different driver in year 2. I hope so for his sake, and I think the sport's sake. I think he could be a really big, young, up-and-coming star, but we got to see him finish races first.
And I think Andretti needs something to happen to stop the bleeding. Every successive year over, what would you say, the last 3 years, maybe even 4 years, the lineup has gotten weaker and weaker and weaker. And it needs to make some changes and try to hit on something that's going to give it multiple bullets in the chamber week after week, race after race. It hasn't had that. And yes, Colton Herta is a star and he's a contender. But other than that, you have a bunch of what ifs and could be's, and it hasn't worked out for Andretti the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, they've gone from having 2 Indy 500 winners on the team as recently as 2021 and several guys who had won races to just Herta being a race winner, no championships, no Indy 500 wins on the team next year with the loss of Alexander Rossi, and then obviously Hunter Ray exited the team after 2021. So that's where things stand. But this is kind of a big year for Herta to try to put something together and bounce back from a disappointing 10th in the championship.
Well, I'm sure we will get that inevitable story about Andretti and their behind the scenes changes, like we do with Foyt as well. But this comes down to the drivers and performing on track. And last year they didn't do it.
And one other note before we get to news and notes and other items in the episode: Flat Rock Motorsports Park and Motor Club, which is a new racing circuit in Tennessee, aims to become a world-class motorsports destination. They could host IndyCar, MotoGP, groundbreaking underway, 2023 opening. This is 30 miles west of Knoxville, so off the interstate. So basically just kind of in between the Tri-Cities area and Knoxville, where you have, Bristol is not that much further away. I mean, you're
right.
A couple hour and a half or so. But this is a pretty big deal. $100 million project in the area. President Rusty Biddle is in charge of it. But 800-acre motorsports park. They want to host IndyCar. A lot of people are already throwing out there, could they be the track that hosts IndyCar, in place of Nashville, if that were to happen?
At least temporarily while they're building the new stadium.
Yeah, that's a possibility, I guess.
My hope look, there's very few tracks out there that say we want IndyCar. So you need to figure out how to go to that facility if they do indeed make the upgrades they need to make to become a good enough facility to host IndyCar. It can't be a NOLA type situation, right? So if they do what they need to do, then I'm going there. And it sounds like an energetic group. We've heard this a lot, though. I mean, the difference between saying you want to do this, that, and the other and actually making it happen is two completely different things. But if Flat Rock can do it, then IndyCar should definitely entertain it, because coming back, there's a lot of tracks out there, and not a lot of them are saying we want to host IndyCar.
Project also includes a luxury hotel, restaurant, brewery, winery, and live music performance amphitheater. They'll have multiple tracks, as part of this, different circuits, but a 2.67 mile Grand Prix style road course. You had me at brewery. I'm sold. So look, if they have an IndyCar race out there, I will be there. But
now Knoxville is what, the south or the east part of Tennessee?
Far east.
So from Nashville to Knoxville, what, 2 hours?
Well, because it's in a different time zone, it's
but I'm saying
it's like technically it's like a 2.5 hour drive, but due to timing, it's different.
So yeah. But without time zone change, it takes 2.5 hours to get from Nashville to Knoxville.
Roughly.
Okay.
So I mean,
as I'm learning my state capitals, where Knoxville was on the map.
Yeah, it's close to, say, if they keep Nashville. I think it's just completely different crowds. I mean, you're talking about a completely different market. A street circuit from a road course. I mean, those are different bases of people. I
would agree. Put a couple months in between them, you're fine.
Yeah. No concern. I mean, just like Milwaukee and Road America. Road America's a road course.
Yeah.
Milwaukee's actually in, the city. It's an oval. These are different types of events.
And I think
you space them out 2-3 months, you're good.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, the Nashville crowd strikes me as 80% of those people, maybe that's high, but 70% of those people aren't paying attention to IndyCar the rest of the year.
I don't know. I mean, for the first race, yeah. I mean, it's just a curiosity factor. Yeah. Last year, I think you had a lot more IndyCar fans.
Yeah.
But I'd say they're mostly fans from Nashville or wanting to go to that race because it's a destination city.
And that's what I'm saying. Destination city, something to do, other things going on in addition to the race. I just don't know how many of those people going to Nashville also are traveling to other races, at least the people that live in Nashville that are going to the race. So I think they could both work. Spread them out a little bit. I feel like you'd be fine.
Yeah. I think if you have a big enough gap, you can definitely figure everything out.
I'm sure there's people out there going, well, why don't you just go to the Nashville Super Speedway if you're going to another race in Tennessee? Well, if people would show up to oval races, maybe they would.
Yeah.
But they don't.
Also, that racetrack is nowhere close to Nashville. I cannot stress that enough.
Which, just because they're both in Tennessee doesn't mean they're that close together.
Yes, correct. If you would agree or disagree with us, we'd love for you to interact with us. You can find us, newtrackrecordpodcast.com. While you're there, sign up for the email list so you never miss an episode or any special announcements. Plus, you can also check out the store. We have t-shirts and stickers for sale year-round. Be sure to check those out. You can also follow us on social media. Our Twitter handle is IndyCar Podcast. Same on Instagram. On Facebook, just search for New Track Record. You can email us, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com. You can support us via Patreon, patreon.com/newtrackrecord. Thanks to Xavier, Rob, and others for their support. Again, just as little as $1 a month to be a supporter for us on there. And as always, you can follow us for free on your favorite podcasting platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, CastBox, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever you find your podcasts, all for free. Okay, mailbag time. We actually have a lot to get to because, you're off for a couple weeks and that's how these things happen. So first off,
what do we got?
We have several things. People commenting on Latifi going away. This from F1 Porpoise. Goodbye, Latifi. You have been so slow.
Poor Latifi. Is it Latifi or is it Williams? Probably both.
Yes. I feel like it's a little bit of both. Someone talking about, Indy Lights champ and, Lundqvist not really having opportunities. A run_Mark_run says it should be an automatic promotion. I mean, it was essentially with the correct money, but now that's gone away and now you're having issues. I just think
and it's still not coming back next year from what we understand. It seemed like it was going to be a problem rectified for 2023, but it doesn't sound like the purse is going to increase by that much.
No, the race by race payouts are better, but the purse for the winner will not increase, which is a problem.
But it's very much, and could this be a long time play? Because does Roger Penske want the leader circle to be as lucrative as it is, as opposed to paying out to win races? And is this maybe a step to, okay, we're going to do it with Indy Lights and then go the way of it in IndyCar where you're going to have to perform on track to get some of this money?
I sure hope not.
I mean, I don't know. A successful business doesn't include subsidization, or at least subsidization at the level that IndyCar does with its winner's circle money. We just take that for granted at this point, that it's just something you get, but it's a subsidized league is what it is. You're getting paid to participate as a full-time car or entry in the series. And that's not good business sense. It's not as Roger Penske, when you're handing out, what is it, $22 million $1 million per entry per year. That's a lot of money.
Well,
That's
and think about this in F1. I mean, like, you got to score points to get, money. The prize money for manufacturers.
Yeah. Now, of course, IndyCar is not on the level of Formula One, but there's also not any subsidization in Cup, correct? I mean, you're getting media money.
Well, they have the whatever they call the team, like the transfer charter. Yeah. Charter system.
But that's more to be in the league, not to be part of some sort of subsidy that you're getting in Cup. So long term, business sense tells you that we have to get out of the hole of giving $20-25 million per year to our teams for participating in our series. And I think it's for a long time we've taken that for granted because it's been needed. But how does IndyCar get to a point where it's not needed? And I think that's a great question. And it would be nice to have a blueprint for what Penske Corp is going to do with this series going forward. And we'll touch more on that next week. But could this be with Indy Lights, maybe testing the waters of that and saying, okay, let's see if we can cut out some of this financial assistance to these drivers and teams and put it more in the purses and see how that results. So far, the results have not been good, at least for the Indy Lights champion. You can't make it mandatory because you can't make a team run a guy or girl. You just can't do that.
Yeah, but we've only seen one Lights guy not even get an IndyCar opportunity. That was J.K. Vernay, and that's simply because he crashed in his IndyCar test.
Not great.
He was not great.
So you hope this is the exception to the rule this next coming season with this situation, but with Linus Lundqvist. But we'll see. Well, hopefully it's not the start of a trend. That's a problem.
Yes, it is absolutely a problem. Discussion on more ovals. Penske's comments on wanting more ovals on the schedule. Nick J. Fletcher says, I hear they're turning Burke Lakefront Airport into an oval shaped like Milwaukee with the fencing from Pocono and the bleachers from Chicagoland. Going to cap ticket sales at 38 seats, hoping for a sellout. For the record, I'm going to Milwaukee if it's back. Hunter's Way 67 says, then make it happen for crying out loud. Stop putting everything off for a year or two and act now. Yeah, I think IndyCar fans are getting to that point. I think we are. Phil_Barksdale, this is a great point. Do more ovals want IndyCar, though?
I would agree.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Ovals want IndyCar if the race can be profitable. And I don't know how many ovals on the schedule right now are profitable. I can guarantee you Texas isn't.
No.
I don't know if Iowa is after the amount of investment they had to make last year.
I think it is just based on the sponsor with Hy-Vee.
Probably. But I think Hy-Vee took a loss on that last year just to put itself out there in terms of marketing.
Their name out there.
Yes.
Nationally.
Everybody says, well, just market Iowa, like every race like Iowa. Well, you had a sponsor in Hy-Vee willing to take a loss in order to market its company. And you're not going to get a lot of sponsors to do that. You want return on your investment. And the return on investment wasn't financial for Hy-Vee. It was eyes on product, right? So going back to it, you have to make sure these events are profitable for these tracks, and it's easier said than done. You can't just say, well, take the Iowa model and do that. It doesn't work everywhere. And so before you were saying, do the Gateway model. Well, we're seeing how that's going now with Gateway having a Cup race and IndyCar very much an afterthought now.
You tweeted this, IndyCar fans, we want more ovals. IndyCar adds more ovals. IndyCar fans do not show up to ovals. IndyCar drops ovals. Repeat. Some good replies here. Jeff Cerneski, I want more ovals, but what oval are you going to add that provides great racing product? Milwaukee and Richmond may work well with the current package, but did not with previous versions of the car. Larger ovals mean fewer Sport Series races and no side-by-side racing. Jordan_Willman says IndyCar fans have a type. Their heart is for ovals, but the brain suggests road and street courses. People want to go out to events, not sit in the bleachers on ovals all day, especially if you're competing with the World of Outlaws and other oval series. More entertaining. Nick J. Fletcher just says, I think you meant hashtag IndyCar in all caps. Indy 500 Trump says, the oval product is boring, even at Indy. Till that's changed, people aren't going to show up year after year outside of the cultural event that is the 500. Yeah, I feel like the oval product has to improve as well. I think that's an issue. It's
a chicken or the egg thing, right? So do you go to ovals and try to make the product better and take a loss until you can get it better? I don't know. I really don't. I think you're in a hard spot now. here's what you do. If you had a new chassis, a new sexy chassis, some new rules, something like that, shake it up, then maybe you can sell your new car, your new hybrid engines, blah, 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 to these new ovals. But it's the same car. And it's been the same car for a while.
Yeah,
There's no plan.
For a decade.
What is getting tracks excited in 2022 that's coming in 2024, 25, or 26 to make you want to host an IndyCar race?
Hybrid engine's not going to cut it.
No. That's 10-year-old technology, 15-year-old technology that's finally coming to IndyCar. It's nothing innovative. We've seen it in Formula One forever.
At least they have fully renewable fuel, which is truly ahead of everyone else with the exception of Formula E because, well, they run on,
obviously,
on battery power.
It is, but really, is that moving the needle?
No.
It's cool. You can market it. You can say you're friendly with the planet, environmentally conscious, blah, blah, blah. But is that really getting thousands of people off their couch and going to races? No.
No, it's not. I posted this poll. Who or what does McLaren sign next? 41% said Alex Palou. 39% said Target. 13% Scott Dixon. 6.5% said Carvana. Some of the replies, Scuba Steve 85 says Mike Hull. According to Stitch says Dario. Laser Disco says Ross Chastain. Art Cole says if they get Target, I will be dead. IndyCar DJ 32, I voted Target. That would be hilarious. Yeah, Ross Chastain, man, video game move. I mean,
wild.
It does not get better than that.
The clip of the year, in my opinion, in motorsport North America.
Yes. I mean, it's that is the highlight in racing this year. I don't know how that can be topped.
And people worried, well, now people are going to do that all the time. Look, it only works at Bristol, Martinsville, and maybe Richmond is the only three places you can do that. If you want to go try that at Texas or any other mile and a half, good luck.
Some replies on the new Indy Lights name. Laser Disco says IndyCar marketing department and a gif of the how do you do fellow kids. Yeah, I think that's
that was the perfect
spot on. Perfect
gif for this situation.
Jeremy from HBG, this is so stupid it isn't worth the effort to make fun of it. Okay. From Samuelus with a 3 mixed in. So Cooper Tires are out as a sponsor, eh? Yep. That was a Firestone move because Firestone and Penske Entertainment took over, so that kind of changed that whole makeup there. But some good replies on this, and look, it is what it is. I don't like the move. You don't like the move.
Something that wasn't needed. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Fully agree. And I guess the WWE issues, Plain Spade says, how long until the WWE sues? In all seriousness, you thought this was a good idea. Atlanta Cat 99, and my condolences to all the drivers who were forced to post about it. Lights was much better. Yeah, that part was really awkward. Seeing everyone
try to be excited.
It's like, no. I didn't buy it for a second. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe they got great feedback. But here's the thing. They'll get feedback now, and it'll just be people making fun of the name all season.
It absolutely will be. Maybe it'll go the way of Defy Everything and every other catchy marketing slogan they release every February or March that quickly goes away.
Some other replies that I missed on, some tracks and ovals. Someone else said, Big D Cart said 2 words, Cleveland Roval. On as far as who's McLaren signs that, Ramses _A _Perez says, is an Alex sign for 2024? Yeah, as far as we know, he is.
Correct.
Autosport Lab said Husky Chocolate is title sponsor for Alex Rossi. Tyler _Allen, the other Zach Brown's band. That's funny.
Yes.
Scott Dixon's Taco Bell. He also says that. That's a good one.
You have to think next is what? It's the big bank for them in Pittsburgh.
That's PNC.
PNC. Oh, yeah, they're jumping.
Yeah. Bauer Racing says, I want world peace when referencing, ovals. He just wants world peace. Someone else, Daniel SCM 2004, just come back to Pocono and Watkins Glen. Yeah, you got to get a Northeast race.
Yeah.
And then DeGuerra.
New Hampshire?
Maybe. DeGuerra
as long as you don't try to restart the race in the rain.
Yeah. DeGuerra says, well, the fans did show up at Iowa talking about ovals. That is true.
They showed up for an event.
Yes.
They didn't show, I don't think some people showed up for the race, for sure. A lot of other people showed up for concerts, and that's fine. But not every race can be an event like that with a sponsor willing to take a financial loss.
Time for news and notes. Thanks to everyone for their submissions in the mailbag. News and notes time. Plenty of little items to get to. First off, Alex Palou at his FP1 at COTA finished 17th in the session.
Pretty impressive performance. I thought.
Considering he never got to run on soft tires. Looked pretty good. Had great pace mid-pack before the drivers switched to softs. Logan Sargent also got a debut. He didn't get a super license point out of it, though, because he was like 4 kilometers short of the 100 kilometers required due to a late red flag.
Lame. Just round up.
Yeah.
Come on.
Daniel Ricciardo, also at COTA, said, ovals scare me in regards to IndyCar. Not going to move to IndyCar next year. This is not a surprise. It was never going to happen. Then there's Valtteri Bottas with his comments. IndyCar is quite interesting. It seems like a pretty cool series. Tracks are nice. The racing seems really real and probably, from my understanding, a little less politics than an F1.
A little bit. Yeah. Understatement of the century.
Understatement. And then Chip said, give him my cell number in a tweet. And then Bottas said he was not swayed by Ganassi's tweet. But here we are.
Well, that means if Ganassi's reaching out, Zach Brown will soon be reaching out. I think Valtteri Bottas could be a guy that once his Formula One career is over would come over and do IndyCar. But I don't know. Are we reaching a point where every driver that's nearing the twilight of their Formula One career is going to be asked about IndyCar? I mean, do we really need that?
It seems like that's a thing.
It's like
Vettel, Ricciardo, Bottas, Latifi.
It's just kind of
just because
ridiculous.
Grosjean came over and Alonso did a couple races. Right? I mean, that's basically
it's now everybody that's about to be spit out the bottom of the Formula One, whatever, I don't know, toilet, basically, is asked about IndyCar. And then we totally overanalyze the comment, whether it's positive or negative on IndyCar, and ridicule the driver for saying if he doesn't say 100% what we want him to say about IndyCar, then people jump down his throat. And if they do talk positive about IndyCar, then he's got to be mentioned in every single open seat for the next 2 years. It's kind of annoying.
Meanwhile, in IndyCar Next, Jacob Abel back with Abel Motorsports next year.
What's IndyCar Next?
Indy Lights.
It will always be Indy Lights, just like it'll always be Gateway.
You still call it Sonoma, not Infineon. Remember it was Infineon Raceway? True. Yeah.
Yes.
This is good news. In fact, I had my tickets confirmed for the 500 for next year, but all tickets for 2023 events at IMS are on sale. That was as of last week.
We actually had Doug Bowles on our morning show last week when you were out, and president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway joined us to talk about sales for the 500 and other events, and said that renewals have been very, very good from last year. So in good spot, but plenty of tickets to be had now that individual tickets are on sale.
Some driver news. Elio, Simon Pagenaud will be back with Meyershank Racing for their IMSA Endurance lineup in 2023. This is not a surprise. I mean, they're sports car aces. Lee Diffie has signed a multi-year extension with NBC Sports. So if you love Lee, you'll get him for more years. If you hate Lee, deal with it. I love my Lee Diffie during Olympic luge. Yes.
And bobsled.
Yes.
He brings it, man. Love it.
He brings the action, if you will.
He does. Skeleton, double luge, which I feel is always kind of awkward to watch, but he makes me kind of ignore a little bit about the position that two people have to lay on top of each other on a sled. I quickly forget it when Lee Diffie is giving me the action going down the icy tracks that is bobsled luge skeleton.
Also, Marcus Ericsson will be doing a tour in Sweden this month with the Borg Warner Trophy. In fact, it's underway. November 3rd is we're recording it through the 7th. We'll visit Stockholm, then his hometown of Kumla. It's only the 4th time the Borg Warner Trophy has left the USA. I know it left for Japan when Sato won.
Did it go to Brazil anytime?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I have to think it went up there.
I'm sure it went to
Kanaan
Canada with
Elio.
like Jacques Villeneuve when he won. I would think. Right? I don't know. But yeah, that's a great question. Road America's announced its repave project completion. So that we'll have some track records next year, you would expect.
Installed.
And then,
I can imagine what track times will go down because it's such a long track and it'll be so much faster. We were talking 5, 6, 8 seconds better than the track record. Maybe. I don't know. It's just such a long track, so much time to be made up.
And then Jimmy Johnson, this is from Jordan Bianchi of The Athletic, finalizing a deal to obtain an ownership stake within the Petty GMS organization starting next year. Johnson will also drive in select races for the team. Announcement expected this week. So there's kind of your NASCAR tie-in as part of his kind of picking and choosing what he wants to do next year.
Definitely taking the path, maybe not as involved, but of a Jeff Gordon. He's part of Hendrick. And, of course, drivers like Dale Earnhardt Jr. owning their own teams. So don't see Jimmy Johnson at least jumping in that deep in ownership and operations, but definitely is going to have a piece in the pie or skin in the game, so to speak, in Cup going forward.
And a couple of things from IndyCar Deep Throat before we get to our random split error driver of the week. So first off, a source telling IndyCar Deep Throat, Jimmy could possibly run full-time next year instead of part-time, as Chip is open to other sponsorship options coming to the team. So there's a possibility there, which is, I think, very, very interesting.
I just don't think Jimmy wants to do it.
Yeah, we shall see. I guess I'd be surprised too. Also, some other kind of semi-related things with all that Carvana. Jimmy can race as much as he wants with that. And then also would be sponsoring a car for a NASCAR team as well as part of that. Also, Tony Stewart looking to sell off the rest of his ownership to Gene Haas next year for the NASCAR Cup team.
So he would get out of ownership? Team ownership in NASCAR?
Potentially.
Huh. Interesting. I mean, is he a guy that's going to double down on SRX and build that, or have some other irons in the fire?
Well, remember he's doing his NHRA stuff now.
Oh, that's right. He is racing. But is that his team, or is he just racing in it?
I do not know. I think it's his wife's team or...
Oh, yeah. Is she an NHRA driver? I think she is, isn't she? Yeah, so that makes sense. I'm sure he's got a financial stake in that. So that would make sense. But like NHRA doesn't have very many. I mean, I guess how many events do they have like per year? It's a lot less than Cup.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Way less than
maybe
Cup.
It's like in between IndyCar and Cup, or maybe even less than IndyCar. I don't know. I always picture like 12 or 15 events for NHRA season, but I don't really know. That's interesting. Is he a guy that is trying to lessen the load of what he's got going on just to relax, or lessening the load because he's got other things he wants to do?
I think there are other things he wants to do, and that would be
Byfoyt.
Yeah, that would be NHRA. I think is Leah Pruitt.
Well, what the wife says,
drag racer, and she races for Tony Stewart Racing. So go figure.
Yeah. Well, what the wife says, what the wife wants, wife gets.
Yes, and I think that whole partnership and his interest, I mean, he's very curious about doing the drag racing stuff, and good for him. Look, he's won in everything else. Why not try something new?
I just always have a hard time
really cool
equating NHRA with racing. You're just going in a straight line.
Have you ever been to it, though? Have you ever been to like the U.S. Nationals in Indy?
I'm not saying it's not exciting or anything. I'm just saying it's very tough for me to equate that as racing. But that's me.
You go see it in person, I mean, it'll blow you away.
I imagine those cars are
it's
just
incredible.
Watching is crazy.
The air, like just moving from if you go to the starting line, obviously bring ear protection. I cannot stress that enough.
Oh, I'm sure.
But you go up to the starting line and they take off, the smell, the air, just the big whoosh. I mean, it's crazy. It's an amazing experience.
I'll have to do that one of these days. Maybe I'll have a newfound respect for it.
For sure. All right, no tweets of the week because, well, I didn't find anything that was that good, to be honest. So we'll go to our random split error driver of the week.
All right, we're going early days of kart, at least in the split, late 90s, early 2000, and going with Luis Garcia Jr. Brazilian race car driver born in Brasilia in 1971. He was with, in 1999, Peyton Coyne Racing and Hogan Racing.
Okay.
And then 2000 was with Arrow Racing. And in 2021, for the first 2 races of the season, with Coyne Racing. And a guy that overall raced in, over close to 30 races in kart over his career, and raced in Formula 3. He raced in Indy Lights in 97 and 98, and captured a win in 1998 at Cleveland in Indy Lights. Made his kart debut at the season opener in Homestead. After 7 races with Coyne, he moved to Hogan Racing, where he made 3 more starts. In 2000, he returned and ran a full season in the Arrow Project Racing Group Reynard Mercedes, sponsored by Hollywood and Embratel out of Brazil. He returned for the first 2 races of the 01 season with Coyne before poor finishes and a lack of funding ended his kart career. He has not driven in a major professional auto race since his last kart appearance in 2001.
So his sponsor in 99 was Tang.
I see. That's the initial reason why I took Luis Garcia Jr., because everybody loves Tang.
Yes, and his teammate at Hogan Racing was Helio Castroneves.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he turned out okay. That would have been Helio's rookie year, his second year with Hogan Racing,
99,
before
right?
he went to Penske, and his rookie year was with Bentonhausen Racing, where he actually had a couple of better results, but was slightly better in points in 99. But yes, teamed up with a fellow Brazilian at Hogan Racing for a couple of races in 99, and was with the revolving door of Peyton Quinter. I mean, his teammates, Michel Jourdain Jr., Dennis Vitolo, Galter Salas, Mimo Gidley.
A who's who of
yes.
random split era drivers of the week.
Correct. That, to be fair, that we would actually know.
Yeah, they're so obscure we know them.
We know all of them.
Which is always the fine line between random drivers that we know and always name drop, or random drivers that we've never heard of. But the top finish for Luis Garcia Jr. in kart was an 11th at Michigan in 2000. Also had 12th place finishes at Long Beach and Rio that year, as well as Toronto and Surfers Paradise. He finished 27th that year in points. And of course, his final 2 races with Dale Coyne Racing in 2001, it was the Grand Prix of Monterey to start the season, and then the Long Beach Grand Prix, 26th and 27th at those 2 races, and then was dropped. Those were his final 2 races in kart, and that was it for Luis Garcia Jr., this week's Random Split Era Driver of the Week.
The champion in 99, Juan Pablo Montoya, who tied with Franchitti but won more races. So that was the deal there. But I was looking at the 99 lineup. I've heard of everyone outside of Luis Garcia Jr. And the other one that I didn't know, Andrea Montermini, who ran for All-American Racing with Dan Gurney, a couple of races with that
future
team.
Random Split Era Driver of the Week right there.
But everyone else...
But I started in 90... What was the first year of the split? 98?
96.
96? So I went through 96, 97, 98, and it was like, I know all these drivers in kart. Then it started getting a little bit sketch in the late 90s. And then, of course, the fertile feeding ground that is 2005 kart, that will carry us through 2023 and 2024.
Well, and to be fair, 96, 97, 98, 99, 2000 IRL also, has a lot of guys you would not have heard of.
Definitely. Those are the fertile ground of IRL, and then it switches to a fertile ground of kart/champ car in the early mid-2000s.
All right. Well, that wraps up this week's episode. Next week, we'll be back 3 years in of Roger Penske Entertainment in control of Indianapolis Motor Speedway, IndyCar, and for good measure, IMS Productions as well. At least 3 years since the announcement. Yes, technically they took over January 1 of 2020, but just for purposes, we'll do 3 years in. Since it's the off season, we need things to talk about. And we'll kind of break it down. Where do things stand? What are some positives? What are some negatives? What can we look to build on? And what's worked? We'll discuss all that next week, plus all the IndyCar news that comes in. Look, I'm sure we'll probably get some driver announcements as well during this time. For Justin Kinney, I'm Caleb Hatch. Thanks for joining us on another edition of New Track Record Podcast.
Podcasts by Federated Media.